The head of Russia's Ministry of Foreign Affairs, Sergei Lavrov, is once again facing the threat of dismissal. He is being accused of huge losses on the front lines that could have been avoided. This was reported by the Telegram channel Kremlin, citing a source in the Kremlin. According to this source,
Sergei Viktorovich has recently become not very diplomatic in his public statements. I understand his position, but this approach may no longer work.
Citing a source, the Kremlin Tabakerka writes that many people actually like Lavrov's bluntness, including when it comes to negotiations about ending the war in Ukraine. According to another source who supports the Kremlin negotiator Kirill Dmitriev and his associates continue to push for Lavrov's resignation. In the fall, they tried not only to replace the foreign minister, but also to send Lavrov to prison for treason. At that time, Sergei Viktorovich managed to keep his position, but now a new attack against him is beginning, the publication writes. In their opinion, Lavrov is a diplomat of the old school, and his approaches no longer work very well.
We will personally convey to Vladimir Vladimirovich our thoughts on why it is absolutely necessary to remove this minister.
Rumors about the resignation of the head of the Russian Foreign Ministry first appeared in November 2025. The media cited the failure of the summit between Donald Trump and Putin as the reason for his removal from office. The Financial Times wrote, Lavrov's stance during his brief meeting and subsequent phone conversation with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio was so uncompromising and unyielding that it caused surprise in Washington and led to the cancellation of the planned leaders' meeting in Budapest. To dispel the rumors, the Russian diplomat had to offer explanations.
The memorandum mentioned by the Financial Times journalists is a so-called non-paper, not an official document, but rather an entirely unofficial draft.
Lavrov's absence from the Security Council meeting, when Putin was discussing the prospect of resuming full-scale nuclear tests, only added fuel to the fire at the time.
Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov complained that the U.S. initially offered Russia agreements to end the war in Ukraine, but now has allegedly backed out of them. According to him, the agreements in question were discussed in Anchorage, Alaska, during the summit between Vladimir Putin and Donald Trump. Lavrov stated that it was specifically the U.S. position that was important for Russia. His interview is quoted by the TASS news agency. For the Russian Federation, the situation and the U.S. position on Ukraine were important. It didn't matter what was said in Kyiv or what the rabid Russophobes in the EU said. That's a quote. According to him, the U.S. proposed agreements to Russia for resolving the issue of the Russian-Ukrainian war. Moscow reportedly agreed to these proposals, but now Washington itself has backed out of the agreements. Lavrov called for a more mature and responsible approach to solving this problem. He also further pointed out that after the summit in Alaska, Russia and the United States were expected to begin to move toward broader cooperation. But in reality, the complete and total opposite happened. The Russian foreign minister declared that Russia must ensure its own national security, since allegedly there are threats coming from Europe about the possibility of a great war. Lavrov expressed his grievances that the West has unleashed a global war against Russia and is also trying to punish its partners. He specifically emphasized that the Kremlin will oppose the deployment of any weapons on Ukrainian territory that would threaten Russian security. However, he did not specify exactly what kind of weapons he was referring to. And do you believe in a major war between Russia and Europe, or perhaps between Russia and the US? Share your thoughts in the comments and we'll read them. In general, Sergei Lavrov also commented on the U.S. sanctions imposed against Russian oil companies. According to his recent statements, this is an attempt to suppress and undermine competitors. In addition, he expressed his complaints that the U.S. is trying to control Russia's military technical cooperation with India and other key members of the BRICS alliance. He stated that the West allegedly invented Russia's so-called shadow fleet and that ships are being detained as part of the struggle to maintain their waning dominance. Russia does not see any bright future in economic relations with the US, Lavrov admitted. Based on the statements provided by him, the Donald Trump administration not only has failed to lift the sanctions imposed by the previous Joe Biden administration to punish Russia, but it is also continuously introducing even more new ones. At the same time, Lavrov said that Russia remains open to cooperation with the US in the future, but that American politicians themselves are allegedly creating artificial obstacles. Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov also emphasized during his remarks that Russia does not plan to attack Europe. However, if the West strikes Russia first, the Kremlin will be forced to retaliate with all available means. It will not be like a special military operation, declared the Russian foreign minister. And which Europe are we supposed to attack? We have absolutely no need for that, said Lavrov. However, he clarified that in the event of a threat to Russia, Moscow's response would not be limited to a special military operation. If Europe suddenly starts attacking Russia, it will not be a special military operation on our part. It will be a full-scale military response using all available military means, Lavrov noted. He also accused Ukraine of launching the first strikes on energy infrastructure and stated that Russia is responding in kind. Russia's patience is not limitless, it measured for a long time before cutting off, Lavrov stated. In particular, he pointed out that Russia had shown goodwill, making a specific reference to the energy truce in 2025, which, according to him, was subsequently violated by Kyiv. In addition, Lavrov stated that Russia explained to the US that the main issue for Moscow is not about territories, but supposedly about people. The foreign minister also claimed that Moscow has a clear conscience because it allegedly recognized Ukraine as a neutral and non-nuclear country. And what would you say in response to Lavrov? Make sure to write your answers in the comments and we'll read them. Don't forget to leave a like.